Welcome to Food, Wine, Pets, Travel. I'm Brian Pickering, and this is all about better gardens on the road. Now, even if you're not a full-time nomad, growing your own herbs, spices and possibly some veggies not only adds a bit of convenience to your travels or lifestyle generally, but it can also help make your home on wheels feel a little bit more like home. Now, I managed to catch up with garden and sustainability guru Adam Woodhams to find out how we might be able to grow a few of the basics as we travel this great country of ours. Adam, let's talk about gardening. Now, for Food, Wine, Pets, Travel, we're trying to talk to people perhaps who are travelling or maybe who are setting up in a small environment, you know, the so-called micro homes, small homes, you know, tiny houses and whatever. So Kay and I are now travelling in a caravan. She wants to grow some herbs and spices.
Yep.
Any ideas there, any secrets? I know some people do, but is it difficult?
You know, the funny thing is, you kind of almost have to treat them like pets when you're travelling, because normally what you do...
take them to bed? Right, okay.
No, not quite that much. Right. The fact is that the vast majority of herbs and even many of the vegetables do take well to growing in pots. So you've got a plus there. So it's in many respects not different to gardening on a balcony or in a courtyard. The difference is that you're going to have to pack them up every now and then and move with them. So most of the herbs, most of the veggies, as I said, can handle all this sort of stuff. You do need to apply the same sort of rules that you would if you were container gardening on balconies. So, you know, a quality potting mix, good pots. But the difference is you're going to have to start looking at things like making sure, instead of you might normally select a tall pot and terracotta and that sort of thing, you're going to want to start looking at the lightweight pots instead. So if you've got bigger veggies and things, you want to use the lightweight composite type pots. But you also want to start looking at things that are a bit more squat, because if you're going to load all this stuff, you've got it outside the annex when you set up for a week or so, and then you're going to load it in the van before you take off. You don't want something that's top heavy that's going to tip over. So you're better off sticking with low troughs and low tubs and those sort of things that have a lower centre of gravity, so they're not going to move around.
Well, there's a weight issue too, isn't it, with caravanning? So
exactly. So you want those sort of things. Now, a lot of herbs and veggies can grow with pretty condensed roots, so you don't have to worry too much about getting them into a bigger pot and a bigger pot and a bigger pot. The thing is, they'll just get thirstier and hungrier, you know, so they can tolerate being a bit root bound. And bear in mind too, most veggies and most herbs are actually annual plants. So they're only going to be suitable in those pots for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, depending on the circumstances and the plant.
So once they've grown and you've picked them, you can plant a new seasonal.
Things like rosemary, things like chives, you know, they can keep going for a long time. Things like mint, you know, oregano, they're more perennial type herbs.
They're sort of kitchen shelf thing, aren't they? They're just there for you.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of the fussier ones, like, you know, things like basil and coriander and stuff like that, they're short-term growth, so you don't have to worry too much about pot size. But as I said, it might mean that they're going to get thirstier and hungrier, so you need to be thinking about liquid feeding them or keeping them fed well with a granular fertiliser. The real trick is going to be the vast majority of herbs and veggies like a lot of sun.
Right.
So if you're going to stick them inside the van while you're on the road for 2 days, you need to make sure when you get to the other end that you can put them in a spot where they are still going to get a lot of sun. And look, sometimes that might mean, because of the way you set the van up and you've got your annex out and all that sort of thing, you might actually have to commit yourself to going, okay, I'm going to have to put them on this side in the morning and I'll just need to move them around in the afternoon around the corner to get more sun. So, because most do want sort of, you know, that 6-hour range of sun a day.
You just gave me an idea there, because on the back of our caravan we've got a New Age Oz Classic 20-foot thing, and there were 2 spare tyres. The previous owners took out one of the tyres, I think for a weight reason. Could you, do you think, build a transparent greenhouse, as it were?
Oh, absolutely.
You could drive along and it's not going to get blown around because the lid's closed.
You would want to be aware of the fact that they could potentially get sunburnt in a situation like that.
Of course,
but you could build yourself effectively a transport box where they can be living in that for a while you're moving around. So, and that could be as simple as some tiered shelves that you can just slip your planter troughs into, and then maybe you close doors or you slide a panel down, and
because we've seen a lot of people who stay in places for some time. They have plants and whatever. They've got mini gardens and whatever. Now, with animals, there are restrictions of certain animals you can take into certain states. Does the same apply for plants?
It does, yes. There are some restrictions. When we moved up here, I brought an enormous number of my plants up with me. Because they're, special. Some I've grown for years and years. Some are very, very dear to me because they're from family members that have passed away and all those sort of things. What I did was I actually got in touch with the domestic quarantine to check what was okay to move around and what wasn't.
Okay.
And they asked me for a list of the plants, and they said, fine. Normally the restrictions, for instance, around here, around the sort of Noosa Sunshine Coast region, you have to be very careful with moving banana plants around. So there's very, very tight restrictions on moving banana plants because of the potential of transferring diseases.
I was going to say,
So if I buy banana plants here, I'm only allowed to buy them from certified growers that are allowed to sell into this region. So there are some things you need to be aware of, but the vast majority of things moving around within the state, you're not going to have an issue. There is, in fact, a little guidebook you can get, and I can't remember the name of it, but it basically is about interstate quarantine, and it tells you about what you're allowed to move around in the different areas. And this sort of stuff, if you make sure you go onto the government web pages, you'll find there is good information about what you can and can't
We'll look
move.
up some details on that and put it on our website.
Yes. No, look, it's gardening. If people are on the road, it's great fun and easy to do. My dear cousin Alex has been on the road for many years with her husband's a FIFO and works all around the country, so she follows him around with the car and the big van, and she gardens wherever she goes to.
So it's doable. It is something people can do.
It's very doable, and
just start off small with
it is one of the easiest ways to make your van a home, to really, really say this is our place.
I think that's the whole point. That's what I like. I like seeing a few flowers maybe and as you say,
Yeah, and
basics.
if you want to make sure that you're going to get the best out of all these plants that you're moving around with, only ever buy a premium top shelf potting mix. Don't buy this cheap rubbish. You spend the money on a good bag of potting mix. And use quality controlled release fertilisers like Osmocote that are going to last for 6 or 9 months, because that means you basically don't have to worry about refeeding all the time and stuff like that. All you do is then just give them an occasional liquid feed or a sea sole or something like that.
You're not sponsored by Osmocote, are you?
No.
Well, you should be.
I would have given you a disclaimer up the front.
All righty, Adam Woodhams, thank you very much for joining us.
Brian. Thanks, mate.